Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining this latest episode of HBMA Live. We have a special guest with us this afternoon, and then we actually have two guests coming talking about sort of different programs of HBMA. First is Kunal Jain, who has been my partner in crime in this project. Hi, Kunal.
Oh,
Kunal was the
partner in
Kunal was,
crime. I like that.
well, you were the inspiration behind HBMA Live, so I really want to thank you for that. You gave us the inspiration, the courage to move forward. You shared your experience during this sort of project. Kunal is the CEO of Practice Forces. Those of you who aren't familiar with this company, I see you're getting a thumbs up there. So, Kunal, how are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. Kurt, I'm so excited because actually yesterday I was in Baltimore dropping my son. He is going to Johns Hopkins there. So I was there yesterday. I know we had a little board meeting there. And before that, I was in HIMSS in Vegas for almost 4 days. This year, we were expecting that, there may not be a lot of people attending HIMSS, but I was so excited to see so many people. And this year, HIMSS focus was RCM. And you would be surprised.
Really?
A lot of people were talking about robotics, automation process. People were talking about AI, machine intelligence. And that was my main purpose because I wanted to really see how this technology is going to affect RCM industry by large, because by large, RCM industry is driven by people and processes. But if AI and machine learning and robotics automation process, if that comes, then it's going to impact our processes and RCM industry in a tremendous manner.
Right. It'll make the process probably a little more efficient, probably reduce errors.
Yeah. So there is a possibility it may reduce manpower, number one.
Yes.
So that would be good because people who have like hundreds of people working for them. Looks like we have another guest. Sharon is about to join.
Yep. I'll bring her in, but you can go ahead and continue.
Yeah. So, hey, Sharon, how are you doing?
Sharon, welcome for joining
Great.
us.
So good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you joining. So, Sharon, this is Kunal Jain. He's one of our board members. He actually gave us the courage, the shared experience on how he himself has done webcasts. And so he gave us the idea of HBMA creating this program.
Thank you, Kurt.
Oh, wonderful.
Welcome, Sharon.
And then Sharon is going to be one of our presenters at HBMA 2021 in Dallas. She's going to talk with our attendees about diversity, equity, and inclusion and fostering that within your company. So I think
fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing you, Sharon. I'm planning to be there actually a day in advance. But so we were discussing how this year's HIMSS in Vegas, their focus was RCM industry by and large, and AI, machine learning, robotics, automation. It's coming. I mean, people have been talking about it for many years, but looks like so I tried two companies. One is Automation Anywhere. Another one was UiPath. They both are going to be, they bring their IPOs very soon in healthcare industry. So, and I tried their solution. It works. I mean, it works. So a lot of these processes is going to be automated very soon.
That's great. And Kunal was at this conference. I don't know if you're familiar with the HIMSS conference, Sharon, but it's typically attended by thousands of people, right, Kunal?
There were about, I think they had 20,000 people registered for it.
Wow.
But I think, and realistically, there were about 10,000 people.
That's still impressive.
Yeah, it was 10,000 people were there. There like 4 hotels, Venetian, Wynn, all 4 hotels were full. But we had enough time to talk to people. Like I met one of my friends who used to be my neighbor 20 years ago in India. And we didn't realize we grew together. We started talking. I just noticed his last name. It just happened to be. And it was a very funny story. And he was representing a company who has been doing robotics automation process. So no, it was great networking this time in HIMSS because you were able to talk to many people. Otherwise, HIMSS is always super crowded. So it's like people are touching each other, and it's just like you're hustling and bustling in the street, crowded street, like in Manhattan. But this time it was, it was very decent, and we had enough space for people to walk and talk and enjoy some networking and conversation.
And yet they turned out still, and people, I guess, had masks on and were, taking precautions.
Yeah. Everybody, the mask was mandated, so everybody had to keep masks. Actually, all the volunteers, their job was just to remind people to maintain their mask above the nose. And I think everybody was doing their job. It was a mask police all around.
Wow. And we'll have similar protocols in place in Dallas for HBMA.
Yes. I think we have to deploy our mask police as well.
Absolutely. And then as a board member, you can help us with that. So
absolutely, I'll be there.
So Sharon, thank you for joining us as well. So Sharon, and just in full disclosure, is one of my former colleagues at Smith Buckland, but you've ventured off and started your own firm. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So having been an association executive for about a dozen or so years, and very much interested in the premise of organizational change and how that impacts culture and how we show up together in team capacity. I took myself back to school several years ago and learned more about that at Georgetown, and have since started my own consultancy to be able to support that. And of course, within that comes diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is its own field. And so getting some specialization around that, and also supporting leadership capacity, supporting the executive, helping them as a coach navigate any change that they might be leading, and how to be the executive for the new organization that they're creating, or the new future that they're creating for their culture, and being able to support the process of transformation along with them.
And at this time in our history, part of that transformation may be about actually making the organization more diverse, making the organization reflect its membership, and helping the organization provide opportunities for equitable participation of its members and its customer base. You'll be talking a little bit about that at the HBMA conference.
That's exactly right. And being able to, so to your point, customize what that looks like for every company, but also to be able to start to cultivate vision around that, and understand what an appropriate process is for that, because there are processes for change and transformation that we know are proven, but there's also aspects of creating safety and equity and belonging while exploring how to diversify, looking at the long term, but what are some quick wins, right? We all want to do things really quickly sometimes, and we have to be very careful and mindful of creating unintended consequences, but also being able to say sometimes there are some quick wins, and we want to be able to find those and feel good about process as we move forward. So outcomes matter, impact matters. It rules the day over intent, but process also matters. And being able to support people navigating the discomfort that sometimes can come from process, or not knowing what to do next, and being able to provide some support and some structure around that as they move forward. So we'll be talking a lot more about creating vision, exploring some of the aspects, trying to create a safe space to ask tough questions. And certainly I'd be available afterwards if that came up and it was a one-on-one question, but wanting to be able to create some education so that we can start to have our own discernment, that we can really start to be leaderly in these decisions. Because I think for a lot of folks, there's been an interest in doing this, but I'm not sure how. And so we're going to talk a bit about that.
That sounds really helpful and timely. Kunal, as a board member and of course
actually,
a CEO.
This is one of the reasons why robotics automation process could not fly, because most processes involve people. And what you just mentioned, that, it's sometimes challenging and tough to create a process from people when a lot of people are involved and the culture is involved, diversity, inclusion, all of these things, they are like the fundamental pillars of creating a process. It's not just technology or a standard protocols. So you are absolutely right. And I think that's one of the challenges I want to see in future, how AI and robotics automation process, they evolve and they create with the help of vision and mission, and how they involve and how they include people in everything what they do. So no, that's very, I'm looking forward for it.
And also, Sharon, you'll be talking at a time when the industry is also in transition. I mean, the whole country is, given the baby boomers, approaching retirement. Many of them have retired, but we're seeing that transition in the revenue cycle management industry as well. Companies where the owners may have been in place for a number of years are looking perhaps to sell or transition leadership. And, this is something I think is an important consideration as that process moves forward. How you open up the door to more people who potentially could take the reins of leadership.
You're exactly right. That is a huge topic for so many industries right now. And, we all kind of make jokes. Every generation has its jokes about the generations behind it and how those young folks do it differently, right? But it's real, right? Younger folks, it looks different with every cycle of generations, but they might do it differently. And so how does that look? And being open to the future is different. Leadership requires a different perspective. And creating succession for yourself around that. And succession, if done well, it's often before the moment comes. And that's hard, right? And especially in this last couple of years, I mean, goodness, everything's been, waking up in the morning can be hard, much less creating change and navigating that. So being able to think about succession with a longer lens helps. It helps with everyone starting to understand what the best future could look like and who could lead that, and getting the culture ready for those types of adaptation as they start to move forward.
And Kunal, you spoke about culture as well, just some of the challenges and the fact that we're managing people. The industry is moving towards automation and wanting to use bots and AI, but ultimately there's still people we need to manage too.
That's true. And it really, my curiosity would be, because when you're talking about inclusion and diversity, now if you talk about HBMA and a lot of healthcare revenue cycle management, we have, people working globally, people working in Philippines, India, here. It has become a global industry. So it's a perfect, appropriate, topic for us to discuss how we can develop that kind of culture with diversity and inclusion, which can help us run better companies or better processes. No, this is fantastic. Actually, I'm very excited to hear our entire presentation.
Well, and I'm hoping to
I don't want to divulge everything right now. We don't want to ask.
Right.
We'll keep the curiosity.
That's right. We'll keep them guessing. But I will say, as part of the teaser, is that I'm hoping to have dialogue, create small group discussion. This won't just be me standing at the front talking to folks. I really want to support everyone in having their own personal takeaways that are maybe from the education that I deliver, but also maybe from their own aha moments, figuring out the relationships. One of the principles of transformation includes who do I need to support me and who do I need to push me, and figuring out the accountability component. And that some of that might derive from not private sector, but private places in your life, right? Versus the people in front, but also that everyone can unify around mission, right? Everyone can unify around something. So also exploring what are the ways in which we know we can come together and get behind something, and then start to hold each other accountable, because that's actually where the real culture deep work can happen, is when a culture is willing to hold itself accountable. It's not just coming from the boss all the time, but that we all agree on this so much that we really want to get it right with each other at all times, and doing so with a grace and a care because of how important it is to be with each other.
That's the most important thing, grace and care, because if it is not there, then the communication can fall through the cracks either way.
Absolutely.
That can spoil the culture completely in one.
Yes, of course, because we're all going to get it wrong. We're all going to make mistakes. And one of the things I like to talk about with this is that we're all leaders, but we're also all learners. And that includes, right? So when I'm standing in front of that room, I'm going to probably learn something from you all as well.
Right.
And if we're always taking that posture, we can remain open to being able to continue to improve. And if you make a mistake, you clean it up quickly and you move on, right?
That's true. That's true.
And hope that you're given that forgiveness in the process, because you'll be giving it to somebody else at some point too.
That's true. That's true.
Sharon, I think that's a great point. That's something where I think maybe it's sort of big picture. I don't want to get into those big picture topics too much, but I think we've maybe gotten a little bit away from empathy. That's something I think we really could use to have that forgiveness. I mean, promoting and fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, I think is so much about finding empathy for others, but then sometimes that empathy doesn't come back in the event of a mistake. And so I think that's really important. There will be mistakes, but but it's how we learn from them and move on and grow through them. I think that's really important.
That's right. And it includes for each other and ourselves.
Right.
Right. And so sometimes we can be real hard on ourselves when we
Yes.
make a mistake and kind of just spin out about that, but really just going, it was going to happen. And here is the moment, and let's just move on, because it doesn't help me to move on from making a mistake. I won't learn from it if I continue to sit myself in it. And, you know, one of the important aspects of empathy is we also are talking a lot more in leadership about the role of empathy, and how the role of empathy also supports being allies to others who are different than ourselves, and our ability to learn from them, and our ability to be able to stand up for them, even if they're not in the room. And knowing how to have those courageous moments and even courageous conversations around that. That's what helps us grow as people. I mean, fundamentally, at the end of the day, this is how do we be together, right? Knowing that there's a value for the diversity of thought and approach and style, background, ethnicity, race, education. I mean, all of that has value and richness, and being able to be open to how that goes.
Right. And I know that there are pitfalls to making assumptions, but I think one assumption that we could make safely is assuming the best intentions. You mentioned earlier that sometimes it's not just about intentions is about results, but it's easy to lose track and to get off track, I think, when bad intentions are assumed, when they might not even be intended. It might be simply an honest mistake.
That's right. That's right, because sometimes we are not aware of our impact. And if someone, you know, one of the great things in a culture is if you can assume positive intent, but when we start to notice that the impact might not be aligning with their positive intent, that we can talk about it and say, you know, I know you had the best of intentions in this moment. Here's the impact on me. And I'm making sure I'm staying in focus.
You're in focus, yeah.
That let's talk about that, because I don't think that's what you meant, but I'm not sure what you meant. And I want to give you the chance to tell me, because I don't want to assume. That's not a healthy aspect of our relationship. And say it, you know, with the true intent on my part to that person, to say, I really do want to know, I really do want to learn, and I'm pretty certain you didn't know this had this impact on me, and you deserve that feedback as well, right? And then being able to move forward and go, oh, I'll get it right next time. Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
There you go. And that also highlights, you know, the importance of open communication. That's something that we sometimes shut down and don't communicate openly.
Yeah.
Remember, we were hesitant to sort of raise if we've been harmed, hurt, but then others may not be open to hearing that feedback, that they actually were the ones that committed the offense on someone else.
Yeah.
You know what you mentioned to me, Kurt, that I wanted to ask Sharon this question in the communication, because I have realized over a period of last 5-6 years, especially when the social media has become a prime torchbearer of personal communication. I would rather say that people like to communicate on WhatsApp with one-liners, on Facebook messages, and all of that. The whole communication is changed, like one-to-one personal communication is changed, and everybody is losing their patience.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear some of your thoughts at that time, which are around this whole mode of communication. The whole thing has changed. It is not like it used to be. You're spending 5-10 minutes talking to somebody over the phone, or even one-to-one in the office. You're talking to your colleague for 5 minutes. He doesn't have that kind of patience left, or even you don't have that kind of patience left that you want to talk about the smallest issue for 5 minutes. It's like the maximum conversation stays 1 minute, 2 minutes, 10 seconds sometimes.
Right.
So how are you, do you have this whole aspect during your presentation? Are you taking it into consideration? Because this whole landscape of communication has changed in the last few years, in my view.
I agree. I don't know what generation you're in. We might be similar to each other. And it might be also a generational thing too, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know for sure, but it is my guess that social media was intended to be a positive experience, like a fundamentally enjoyable way to stay connected, share some photos, encourage each other, like look at family from far away. And, there is research that I will not be able to quote right now, but there's research around conflict that says you need about 3 to 5 positive aspects of impact happen to you, whether that's through communication, interaction, in order to navigate a big one that's not so good.
Hmm.
And I would say that the thing about communication, in addition to the last couple of years, which I think also has influenced how we communicate, because I think our own capacities have been diminished. I think our patience has been diminished with how we've been flooded with stuff in the last few years. But on top of, pandemic life, prior years to that, I think communications changed out of, I think there's been some unintended consequences. And instead of halting and disrupting a pattern and changing it, right? Because how many people do we know that said, I've left Facebook, or I'm not texting anymore, or right? There's not a lot of people that do that, but there are some, is that we can all fall into a pattern. And the next thing we know, we go, well, I don't like participating in this thing. And this is how it goes.
It's too much. I need my own space.
I need my own space, or I'm going to do it differently. And you become an outlier, right? Which has its own dynamic to it as well. I think that's real, but to my point, I think that everyone has an opportunity to take a look at that and go, how would I like to do it better? What do I want to experience that's different in this world around that? And what do I want to give that's differently in this world around that? And how am I going to create that ecosphere or change the dynamic in my relationships? Because while I do believe that there's always the macro influence, I firmly believe in the power of the system inside of us to be able to change what we experience in this universe to a certain degree, right? We can control but so much, but in those things we can control them, right? We can control a little bit of how we interact with the world and how we show up. And eventually you start to teach people how to treat you. And I think that if you're slowing down, the other kind of neuroscience component to this is that we all have mirror neurons. And so if you're slowing down and being intentional and changing your language and holding a space for a different dynamic, someone will likely naturally attune to you and show up with a similar energy and a similar rhythm and a similar vibe. And usually in those moments, whoever has the most juice wins, right? And so
you have to start from you.
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe
the
so.
spark
Right?
has to come from you. Yeah,
I think it does, and the same would be true for leadership. The same would be true for being on a journey around diversity, equity, inclusion for an organization. Is that has to have an individual component. What about this is personal to you? What are you willing to learn to move forward, and how are you going to model that within the culture of the organization? It's where leaders have a chance to shine, and I believe a leader does not necessarily have a title. Leadership can come from all sides of the organization.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fantastic. No, I'm looking forward. So, Kurt, tell me again, our conference is from September 9th, 10th,
8th through the 10th. 8th through the 10th in Dallas. So Wednesday to Friday. So it starts out
Friday.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon and goes till about midday on Friday, the 10th. And it's still possible to register.
What time is Sharon's session? What time Sharon's session is?
Sharon, your Thursday morning, right?
Thursday morning.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So we'll start beautiful Thursday morning with your session. That would be very good.
Come fresh. We're going to dig right in. First thing in the morning. Bring your coffee.
Exactly. You'll have no sleepy time after lunch. They should all be attentive at that point. After coffee and breakfast. So
that's right. Well, we will kick off the day together. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Okay.
Looking forward to having you, Sharon. Thank you so much for coming down and joining us. We really appreciate you helping to help HBMA, our membership, our companies to, become more cognizant of issues that maybe they hadn't thought about, maybe they've, seen in the media, but hadn't known what they can do personally, how they can implement and improve, and how they ultimately can make the companies better for their employees, for their customers, and themselves too. I mean, who wants the stress of dealing with these issues that, versus, coming together and finding a way to accommodate work and make people feel ultimately welcome.
Yes. Indeed. Well, I'm proud to be a part of that process for this industry and for HBMA.
And Kunal, thank you for being my co-host, co-guest today as well. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you. And congrats on your son going to Johns Hopkins. That's exciting.
Yes, I'm very glad.
Wonderful.
I'm glad. I'm missing him, but that's okay. I think it's everybody has their time to leave their home. So.
Well, thank you everybody for watching. And if you want to
we have 30 minutes of session now. Yeah.
You can register at hbma.org. Hope to see you all in Dallas. And everyone be well. Stay healthy.
HBMA.org.
HBMA.org. Yeah.
I'll just put it here. Yeah.
There you go.
So everybody can go right there. Here you go. And perfect.
Thanks,
Fantastic.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you there. Bye-bye.